You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Lucy Norris, and this week I chat to founder of Applaud.live and Tune Release. A former freelance violinist, this young entrepreneur has already been listed in the Sunday Business Post's 100 Hot Startups and shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. From winning Trinity College's Dragon's Den to placing third at the National Sartup Awards last year, join me as I find out what it's really like to be Luke Rynne Cullen. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks very much.
I think we'll just start today. I know you have a really big background in music, and that kind of feeds nicely into what we're going to talk about a bit later on. So maybe if you want to start by just kind of telling us a little bit about your background in music. Maybe do you have a memory of when you first picked up an instrument?
Yeah, so I started when I was about 4. In one of my pitch decks, actually, there's a picture of myself, my little brother, and my cousin, and we're all gathered around playing a violin. So I kind of followed the footsteps of my older cousins in terms of all picking up violin, some of them playing cello and stuff like that. I got sent into lessons in DIT, conservatory music, from the get-go when I was only a little nipper. I was doing music instrumental classes twice a week sometimes, then theory on the weekends, and then got straight into orchestras, and that sort of brought the community aspect of music to the fore, where I was starting to make friendships, which helped me develop as a little youngster as well, get some social skills and stuff like that. I suppose the first orchestras would have been Dublin Youth Orchestra, the DIT Junior Orchestra, and then onto the National Youth Orchestra, which was difficult to get in. When you got in, you're blown away by the talent of some of the players there. It was a bit intimidating, but the great thing about it was run over the summer and the winter, so you're in like a sort of band camp of musicians, and you just get to know everyone really well. Everyone's really supportive, and you learn so much just from each other.
And then, you obviously went through school and all that kind of thing, keeping your music always as, I guess, your primary extra activity. And then you went to Trinity College,
Yeah.
where I saw you manage the orchestra there as well.
Yeah, so that was quite fun and challenging. So I did English literature and history in college just because I wanted to diversify a little bit. And I liked creative writing a lot. So what I did was, to keep up the music, I joined the orchestra. So for the first year, just really enjoyed it. We had a trip abroad. I believe it was Lisbon. It could have been Budapest though. Every year we go away, and worked my way up in terms of, I was the players coordinator for a while, managing sort of the outside bookings, which would have been weddings, corporate events, and just a little bit of admin in terms of orchestra management. And then in my final year of college, I became the president of Trinity Orchestra, or auditor as they called it, but that sounds too much like a tax kind of person, and there's no need for that in the orchestra. So there I was overseeing about 110-ish players on a regular basis. Attendance and membership fluctuated throughout the year, but what was difficult at the time was we had very limited funds in the account, so I couldn't really spoil anyone or enjoy the year as much as I wanted to. So what I set out to do really was increase the number of bookings we were doing. And what I often found as well was we were undercharging a little bit, and that's fair enough because we're students. The main thing we wanted was tickets to festivals.
Yeah,
100%. So we were underselling ourselves a little bit. Sometimes our rates wouldn't even cover the van hire, for example. So we really required sometimes a bit of funding from the college itself. But I wanted us to be a little bit independent, because there's bigger societies that get huge corporate sponsorship, and they're able to do so much throughout the year. So what we ended up doing was we got the summer party for a Dropbox, which was really fun. They had a Jurassic Park themed, so they wanted us to play all the anthem music. What else did we do? We played Indiana Jones as well, just because it was kind of in tune with the rest. And then there's free food and drinks after. Then we also did a Dundrum Shopping Centre Shop and Rock event. So that was cool. What orchestra plays in a shopping centre? I don't know.
yeah, different.
Yeah, and then we got back into the festival. So we found sometimes the likes of Electric Picnic was hard to get, and we managed to get onto the Heineken stage. And then we were doing Forbidden Fruit all together now in Metropolis. So it was really crazy the amount of stuff we were trying to fill into one year. It put a lot of stress on the management team.
Yeah, I'd say.
Uh,
Alongside your degree as well. Like, so you
yeah,
have to manage all this.
that year was crazy because I was setting up Applaud at the time. And then I was the live music officer for Trinity Entertainment as well. So I'd battled the bands to contend with. So I had about 4 different kind of heavy hitting jobs to manage, and I kind of put college on the back burner because I knew I wasn't going to go down that route. But I wanted to keep my head above water, and I didn't want to fail or drop out or anything, because it's nice to have a plan B.
So you're doing all of that work for the orchestra and the other society, and you're kind of, I guess, without knowing it, building up a load of skills that you're eventually then going to put into Applaud.live, which is your business that you're running now. So how did you kind of come about thinking, okay, I'm going to make this easier for all of us and set up Applaud? Like, was there a moment where you came to it, or?
So myself and my dad have long car rides up to his house in Mulla, County Cavan. So on the journey, we'd always be brainstorming about different things and talking about, the struggles of day-to-day life. And one of the biggest struggles was trying to find the orchestra bookings, and even trying to find bookings for myself as a freelance violinist. He came up with the idea, or the name, Applaud. And I had the bare bones of an idea in terms of, shouldn't it be as simple as Airbnb? In terms of booking a musician, if I need a wedding band, I want to be able to see the videos of them playing, see that they're available on the date, and just book. That should be so easy, but instead bookings take weeks to finalise. There's so many different variables involved, and quotes range from your grassroots bands at about 400 to your professional wedding bands at about $4,000. So it's a bit of a minefield for someone who's not in the know, and I think a platform would make that easier to navigate.
Yeah, of course. So you come up with the idea with your dad in the car, and then I guess you go back to university, back into your day-to-day of craziness. How did you bring the idea to life?
So the college was really great in terms of the support services they provide. So we had the launch box. It was the launch pad sprints, which is run in association with the Blackstone Group, and they provide sort of a little sprint of about 4 weeks, teaching you the pillars of entrepreneurship. So I was literally going through the library one day, saw a leaflet, and I think the closing date was probably within a couple of days, as always is the case with life. And put my name in the hat, managed to get it. Did the 4 week stint, learned a lot about legals, finding co-founders, and that kind of stuff, and realised the name Applaud, the original idea was an app, because apps were the rage in that time. But I suppose I got great advice straight off, saying why not build a website, or web app as they call it, just to make things much easier, allow desktop users and mobile phone users to access the site, instead of just cutting out half your target market in one go. So that set me on the right path. I won that little sprint competition. 300 quid was a nice little prize.
Yeah. So for that, did you just have to submit an idea on paper? Did you have to actually build a prototype?
I just submitted an idea, and what I did do was I got a lot of advice from people who are slightly technical. Big shout out to Michaela, who pointed me towards Squarespace. This is not endorsed.
It's not a promotion. Do you have a background in tech?
No, not at all. Non-tech founder here, and which is usually the case. So a lot of ideators and creatives are non-technical. But what I have done is I've gone back and gone on Code Academy and taught myself a bit of front end, just so I know what I'm talking about, and I'm able to manage dev teams a bit more better. So built the MVP, which is the minimum viable product, the prototype, on Squarespace. Essentially, the way I could phrase it was I tested the market for less than 200 quid, which is nice, and it's a more pragmatic way of going about it than what I wanted to do, which was build an app. Realised I probably need 20 grand to outsource it.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? When you come up with an idea, it's the money.
Like, we're students. We can't afford big outsourcing. We don't have big exits behind us, or rich parents or anything like that. So Squarespace was great. That led me on to the Trinity Entrepreneurial Society's Dragon's Den competition. I was a bit late applying, but they were really, really sound in terms of allowing me to pitch. I pitched that with a team of 3 developers, Connor, Brian and Gordon, and they were brilliant help. They were all computer science and business students.
How did you find them? Was it just kind of through conversation or?
Yeah, so I asked a friend of mine, and she actually brought me into a room with four of her course mates, and essentially all of them were brilliant prospects in terms of joining the team. But Connor was the one, and this is a great tip for everyone out there. Connor was the one that emailed me after or messaged me afterwards and was like, "I really like the idea. I want to be on board."
Okay.
And it's that little nudge, and sort of a sign of initiative that made me go, well, he's the one. Rather than taking a step back and letting fate decide, grab it by the hand and go for it. So they, and then Brian and Gordon, I found through a Launchbox, Find Your Co-Founder event. So what that did was it had non-technical founders with ideas, and opposite that, it had people that were in technical courses that could execute on ideas, mainly engineers and computer science students. And they seemed up for it. And there was a program during the summer called Launchbox that gave us the bones of €350 a week for 12 weeks each, to work on this idea. So essentially, we were research assistants for the college, working on our own startup. Again, another phenomenal support that they provided. But the Test Dragons Den was held earlier in the year, and we pitched as a team, and we won that and got about 7,500 in expense-based funding. What we did was we put a lot of it into marketing, failed a lot, learned a lot, realised Facebook ads and Google ads aren't always the way to go. And then Launchbox, we built another version of Applaud, a bit more automated. None of us had built a scalable platform before or anything like an Airbnb. So it wasn't a finished product, and we never really got to launch it. And then I was in final year college, so it kind of had to go on the back burner a little bit. So I kept the Squarespace website alive, and then ran for entertainment officer of the overall university.
Just to add something else to your
Yeah,
plate.
why not? So I had a campaign to run as well in
my
final
God.
year. And Jericho was running against me, and it turns out he was doing a master's in computer science. He'd worked on about 3 different startups and a cloud software company. So immediately I was there going, wow, he's got the skills to build a platform. And despite running against each other and the confrontational nature of that, we actually got along really well. We both lost, and we joined forces and created what you see today, which is Applaud.live.
So when you were pitching this idea for all the little different competitions and things like that, did you have artists already signed up, or how did that process start where you started reaching out to people to want to be a part of your vision?
Yeah, so in January I had the Squarespace website up, and I saw a lot of Facebook pages of artists on Facebook. Yeah, of course. And essentially I just sent them kind of a scripted cold message, literally saying who I am, what I'm doing. Student startup gets you away with a lot, and they know it's not going to be a polished product, and you're thus asking them for help in terms of learning. And a lot of them, it was very receptive. They got on board, so we got about 50 musicians within the first couple of weeks. And I was manually creating the profiles, so I learned a lot about writing biographies, what experience musicians need to have to get a booking, and what kind of content a lot of them had and didn't have. And the fact that I spotted a lot of musicians without video and audio content surprised me, because they're certainly not going to get a booking unless they have quality assurance content.
Well, yeah, I guess you kind of want to see what you're getting before you essentially buy it.
Yeah, so what we looked to do was partner with a lot of recording studios, and we trialed it a little bit. Worked out okay. Priced at about 250 to 500 per video, and they were really high quality videos. But we found a lot of musicians don't have the money behind them. So that was the struggle with the business model. Do you charge musicians? Do you charge event organizers? How do you do it? And I want to be able to sleep at night. Yeah. So I hate overcharging or not providing a service as it's meant to be. So we tried out a subscription with the new platform. And the thing is there a return on investment every week? You're not getting bookings every week, but your subscription could be covered by one booking in the year. But still, to a user, that's not great. So I think what we've done now is we've pivoted back to the Airbnb kind of model, adding on a service fee. So the event organizer pays that.
Okay. So you have some people interested artist-wise. Then, you're going through the motions still in college, trying to keep this afloat, as well as all of your other things that you've got going on. And then I read somewhere you kind of started to, it's not bringing in investors, but you started chatting to people in the industry to give you a bit of help. Can you chat to me a little bit about that?
So Enterprise Ireland run a program called New Frontiers, and that's run in most of the major colleges. And what we did there was we pitched, got in, and they provided us with a mentor. And one of the mentors was Richard Tierney, who formerly worked at Live Nation and Aiken Promotions. He provided a good bit of grounding in terms of business strategy, branding. He was really pushing for a lovely logo. I think we finally got there, and stuff like that. But he was really speaking about the big players out there. There's the Live Nation, the MCD, Aiken Promotions. There's all these big companies, and you don't want to be a competitor of them. You want to be a helping hand or a facilitator for making life easy for them.
I think that's quite interesting you say that, because I feel like there's potentially a misconception of people entering a new industry to automatically want to be a competitor rather than think of it that way, whereas you'll probably find it easier to eventually be on the level to compete if you go with them instead of against them in the beginning.
Yeah, 100%. So like if you look at Airbnb, they've gone back to hotels. There's a lot of hotels on the platform now, advertising rooms, which is something you wouldn't expect at all. Sometimes you really do need to speak to those that have been doing it for 20 to 40 years. They've learned a lot more than anyone just starting out, you know. So it was great to tap into them resources. Just go ahead and ask for a coffee. If you meet up with anyone, so the lads in Body Tonic met up with me quite a bit. Learned a lot about their processes. So essentially what you want to do is bring your notebook, write out their day-to-day operations. How do they find artists? How do they book them? How do they pay them? And then already you have so much data on terms of what they're used to, that if you build a product that neatly fits into that workflow, you've got a good start, and you're not pitching something that is going to take a lot of convincing and education for them to use. Because, educating a user is another battle altogether. So you don't want to be doing that.
And where are you at now with the whole thing?
So we're starting to see signs that users like the product. It's still an open beta. It's not a fully finished product. I say we've another 2 sprints to go, and by sprint it'd be about 4 weeks of development per feature. And once we have the 2 sprints finished, we should be good to go for a lovely big official launch party.
Oh, that's the fun part, isn't it?
And then we're sort of talking to a couple of UK PR companies, because a lot of the time, it's almost a fake it till you make it kind of thing. One of the PR companies has a roster including the likes of Elton John, Paul McCartney, Shawn Mendes. And they're really excited about it, but obviously how much is it going to cost? And is there a return on investment? So there's a lot of dreamy entrepreneurs that are going, oh yeah, that's a brilliant opportunity, let's put 10 grand on that. No, you're not going to make it back, because a lot of it's just vanity metrics. How many people are seeing the posts, but are any of them converting into paying customers, or is it actually growing your business at all? Some of the best businesses are done behind closed doors and no one even knows they're a success, you know. And then potentially getting some brand ambassadors with massive followings on board, because what we don't want happening is to be stuck in a niche of grassroots artists. We want to be able to provide an end-to-end workflow and management system for artists, even all the way up to the likes of Hosier, you know. And if we can do that, then we've done a brilliant job. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, it sounds great at the moment. So what would you say, I know you've touched on it a little bit just there, but the ultimate end goal for you as founder and CEO, what would you like to see this product do?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to see independent musicians essentially not have to find managers, not have to sign a deal that gives away 20 to 60% of their income to just the people with the contacts book. Ideally, we want a level playing field where if you're a musician, you've got good music, you're building up a steady following, you're able to apply to an event and get the booking. Likewise, if you're releasing music, you're able to get it out to the distributors, you're able to get it into the media, and everything's there, an open playing field. There's no big barriers to entry.
So from what I'm hearing, this just seems, I know it wasn't at all, but it just seems so effortless for you to have gone from A to B though. And I'm wondering kind of from a personal level what it was like for you over the years, going from freelance violinist, like the person you're trying to provide the service for, to essentially entrepreneur behind the scenes trying to run the whole organization. What was that like, that process?
It is difficult. Like, I think anyone who says it's really easy, they're probably doing the fake it till you make it kind of thing. It's a very hard path to go down in terms of you've no one telling you you're 9 to 5, and that's a big wake up call when you finish college. How are you planning your day to day? What are the steps you need to do? No one's guiding you. So that's why it's really important, I think, to find someone who may be 18 months ahead of you, maybe a couple of years ahead of you, and they can say, look, we failed here, here, and here, but if you do these steps, you'll probably skip a couple of months of stress. I suppose the most difficult stuff I came across would have been in college. It's fine; it's just juggling priorities and college work. But as you get more developed and you leave college, you start having payroll to pay. It is quite stressful, even for myself. I've no wage coming in. We're bootstrapping. That would be the right term for it. So it's tricky, but it makes you focus and prioritize better.
Have you guys ever looked into crowdfunding or anything like that?
We're tempted. It's such a weird one because I don't know if it gives the impression that we're desperate for funding, when I'd like to be able to work and build a product that both is a viable business and doesn't need outside help really for it to grow. But it would be a possible avenue. But the thing with crowdfunding is, and it's something that's not spoken about a lot, 60% of that funding secured before the campaign launches. And that's recommended across the board. So if you're launching a crowdfund campaign for 300 grand, you'll need to have upwards of 200 grand already there for that to even be a remote success.
Okay, so it's not just as straightforward as people think, set up this page and money comes flying in. So when you go to pitch and things, I guess I'm just wondering about the team that you have around you.
So important. So the thing is, if you have a successful exit behind you, you've sold a business before, your credibility goes through the roof. You've done it before. They know that their investment is just to accelerate your growth, and that the investment's in very capable hands. But if you're a first-time founder, it's difficult. I suppose one of the big exceptions to the rule would be Evervault, who raised 3.2 million there recently from Sequoia. And I presume the American VC system looks at the market size, sees the route to market a bit better than a smaller economy, an ecosystem than Ireland. And they're able to take a punt. But 3.2 million is a massive punt. Massive punt. So that's brilliant that you can go out, find funding out there and pursue your idea. It's just difficult. You really have to show that there's a return on investment, that you've built a credible team. So my team's all very young. None of us have built successful companies and sold them on before. So this kind of Applaud is essentially my first go at it, really. My first chance to see if this product goes to market, if it does well, if it scales, and if I have the metrics to back it up. So I suppose if you look at the ecosystem at the moment, Spotify have been building a platform called Spotify for Artists. And this is essentially empowering musicians to really take charge of their own production. So what they did recently was they bought SoundBetter, which is a similar marketplace to Applaud, but you can book a singer to sing on your track, or you can book a producer to make a beat for you, or book an engineer to do your podcast almost, So they bought that with the goal of essentially making it easier to find talent, so that artists are producing more content, more songs, and that really helps Spotify's bottom line. But what's happening with Spotify is artists aren't getting any payouts. They're getting very small payouts, like a few cents per 1,000 streams. So what they're looking at there is, if they're building a platform where you can be booked for your skill set. So you're a brilliant guitarist. If you can get a couple of £100 to play guitar on someone's track, you're making money back. And that's something Spotify hasn't been able to achieve at the moment and is looking to achieve in other ways.
So you seem very much on the road to success with Applaud. That seems to all be going very well. and you also have Tune Release.
Yeah, tune release. That was a fun one. So I had a day off, and this goes to show if you've done it before, it's 100 times easier. So make all the mistakes, please do. Learn from them, and second time round, it's a doddle. So tune release, there's a brilliant content management system called Webflow. It's like a juiced up version of Squarespace. So took no technical knowledge. I was able to build a website in a couple of hours, and then I reached out to a couple of music journalists I knew who are really active in the scene, and within 24 hours, I had a team of 6 and a launched website. But it's hilarious in terms of that would have taken me months the first time around, months, and it would have been a lot of hard work. And I would have been so anxious about emailing these guys and how do I get them on board. Whereas it was a simple, probably 2-3 line email saying, building this, have a look at it. Are you up for joining? Because at the end of the day, it's another person. You know, it's a down to earth person who also wants to succeed, might see the value in the idea, and sees a bit of return on investment for them too. So Tune Release is doing a similar thing to what Applaud is in bookings. So Applaud's leveling the playing field for bookings. What Tune Release is doing is it's equipping musicians with a way to distribute their music to media outlets. That could be radio, publications, stuff like that. So what we can do there is we can, instead of media people being worried about getting a call off some random musician saying, oh, hey, have you got my email about my song? Are you interested? Do you want to feature it in anything? Which has happened the other week actually to one of our writers. We're providing sort of a gateway for musicians to pitch their music in a format that the publications want to receive it in. So you have your WAV files for the radio, your MP3 files for embedding into any online articles, and all the appropriate links, as well as all the contextual information on their biography and what the release is about. And that way the media outlets can view, pick which releases fit the bill and add them in. And what we'd love to do is also give a little feedback functionality, because a lot of artists are creating music and they're not getting any candid feedback. They're releasing music that perhaps no one actually is listening to or isn't really getting behind, and they're not realizing why. And I think even just a couple of options as to why the track's not a good fit will be very easy. It'd be a couple of clicks, and that data alone will really help musicians market themselves and understand the market a bit better.
So it sounds like you're kind of all the time with both of your platforms trying to just essentially minimize roadblocks for artists in a way, and kind of the amount of people it takes between you and your goal. So with Tune Release, it sounds like you're kind of bypassing the music PRs a little bit.
A little bit, because I suppose some companies are charging about $3,000 for a press release. The lower end would be about 1,200. That's very expensive. Now, oftentimes it's worth it. Maybe you get a load of press behind you, and it helps increase your traction so much that it's kind of like a snowball effect. That's brilliant. But other times, musicians, they're not selling records anymore. Streams aren't given a return on investment. So that money is invested and it's gone, especially if it's not handled correctly. So if we're able to, at the moment we're providing the PR service in terms of our music journalists are writing the press releases. But the second stage will be to automate the distribution. And musicians can skip that PR stage if they already have a press release that they'd like to launch themselves. A bit more of an indie route. And that way, we're skipping who has the black book full of contacts.
Yeah, and contacts, I think, are the biggest roadblock in any creative industry, especially if you're just starting out. So, 100%. And so I guess, what are your future goals for Tune Release?
I suppose with Tune Release, it's easier in terms of the business models set. So you have a release, you pay the service fee, and your music goes to market. I'd love to get a load of client testimonials out there, really build it up, and then I suppose grow to a point where we've a really strong but growing team of writers, and we can roll out that model and license the technology to organizations in different countries.
Forgive me if it already is this way, but are you ever looking to kind of amalgamate Applaud and Tune Release together as one overall company?
Rosie joined the team recently, and she's a phenomenal product designer, and the wireframes that she sent me back without me even asking already included an integration between Applaud and Tune Release. So if you're an artist, you sign in and one of the tabs on the left of your profile will be press releases. And that'll be an affiliation program between Tune Release and Applaud.
I think it'd be interesting to know as well, in your opinion, what was the biggest mistake you made through all of this?
Ooh, biggest mistake. I think all mistakes are great in terms of you just learn so much. The trickiest thing with any startup, I think, is finding co-founders. It's really instilled on you by investors mainly, which may not always be the best narrative, that you need someone else, and ideally you should be 50-50 with them. So there should be one marketing sales kind of guy. There should be one development or engineer kind of person as well. And if you're a student, and a lot of the listeners I imagine are quite young, that's tricky because no student has a lot of experience. They have so much going on in their lives, they don't know what they want to do. They may specialise in something entirely different. And again, when you graduate, you need that financial stability, you need a steady income, because you're going solo for the first time in your life, you know. So it's tricky. So with Launchbox, we had essentially 4 co-founders, and think of 4 marriages. That's difficult. And the thing with a co-founder agreement is you need to think of the divorce, just in case, you know, and it could be totally amicably, the parting at the end. Ideally, you're both getting massive checks for your 50% equity each, but that's not always the case, and sometimes someone has to bow out a bit early, and they may need to get a job and they can't bootstrap any longer, and that's okay. But I think just rushing into getting co-founders on board and not aligning personalities as well as goals as evenly. Like some people on the team are really just love the idea, are happy to work on it, will put tons of energy into it. Others do need that financial payment at the end of it, and in a startup it's so up and down that being able to guarantee payments and being able to guarantee a 9 to 5 is tricky. You may have a pitch the next day and you have to stay up till 3 finishing the pitch deck. So I think, just make sure you align the personalities and the goals. There's a lot of templates online in terms of what questions to ask people you may want to get into business with. And a question a lot of the big accelerators ask is, what have you worked on together before? Okay. So can you do a mini project together outside of it? Think of something entirely different. Maybe not even tell them about your business idea, and see how well you work together. Because anyone's brilliant for the first couple of days. They're impeccable. Oh, the sun shines out them. But after a while, you see the real nitty gritty of everyone.
It's like when you go on holidays with like a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah, honeymoon phase.
Oh, okay.
100%, yeah. So you need to give it a bit of time, find the real person underneath the veil they put up for everyone, and see how you get along.
Mm-hmm. And I guess to coincide with that question, do you have a moment that you can think of where you kind of sat back for a moment and realized, you know, I might have actually done this, like I might be making it here?
Yeah, I suppose when we got our first big client, now big is relative, everything's relative, but we got UCD, the Freshers Fair, and that brought in bones of $5,000 in revenue. And the fact that we were able to do that quite efficiently, I think once you see that the model's tried and tested, it works, that's when you can sit back and go, oh, maybe I could do this again.
Mm-hmm. And then I think just to wrap everything up, the final question I want to ask you today, if I ask this to everyone, if you look back at your 10-year-old self, from where you're sitting now, having achieved everything you've achieved at such a young age, I'm going to add as well, I think it's insane. What is the biggest piece of advice you would give your 10-year-old self?
Learn to code. 100%. Oh my God, just having the ability to take charge of your own future, of your own products, build what you want to build is phenomenal. It'd probably be like being an engineer back in the day. Mm-hmm. Being able to code is the new way forward. You can build a game, you can build your own ecosystem, you can build your own platform, but you can solve a lot of things through code. So yeah.
So learn to code.
100%.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting to me today. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please don't forget to share, comment, and rate this podcast if you like what you hear. I'll be back next week chatting to more inspiring individuals, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.